G'day.
Hi everyone, welcome to Parkside Live. Thanks for joining us for a new conversation on living between two trees.
Yes, now, by way of introduction, this week a memory popped up. These things that social media remind us, do you remember on this day, this thing? But this particular memory was of one of our daughters, and she was halfway down a slide and she was wearing a beanie that she loved at the time that was from a kids show, Giggle and Hoot, for those out there watching, which is no longer around. She was wearing a scarf around her neck that you had bought especially for her that no longer happens. Oh, well, no longer around, we've gotten rid of. She was wearing gumboots that she'd outgrown. In this photo, her hair was this platinum blonde, and now it's still blonde, but it's darkened a few shades. And of course, the biggest difference is that in this photo, that she was probably about this big, and right now she's taller than me. So a lot of changes, but it was a memory that popped up, and we have good memories, but this was a memory that just made me smile to remember the moment, taking her to the park and going down there. And I think sometimes we do have memories that are not like that. It's good to celebrate good memories. And as you're watching this, you probably can reflect on your life, on your circle of relationships. And I hope that you can recall some memories that are worth celebrating. Does a memory that's worth celebrating come to mind for you?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking of something else earlier, but right now when you've asked me, the memory that comes to mind, the picture that comes to mind is our wedding on the beach.
There you go.
Yeah.
Win. Points. That's very good. Yeah.
It was a beautiful sunny day, barefoot on the beach. Wales had attended our wedding as well. That was pretty cool. And we made our promises and here we still are. But just that picture,
That's pretty cool.
Came in,
That's pretty cool. And so as individuals, we have memories that can be powerful. Shared memories, I think, can be even more influential. You know, we shared that moment on the beach. And as you're watching this, perhaps you have a memory, maybe even with the people that you're watching with, that you can share, and you go, remember when, and it brings a smile to your face. I think it affirms who we are as people, it affirms our connection. It's powerful. And I think there's a point in your life too where memories seem to begin to loom larger, where you feel that there are certainly points in your life where you're looking ahead, but there are also moments where you think, wow, I'm probably gaining more memories than goals really right now. But then the other end of your life, when you're young, it's about the future that you are creating. And future is about dreams and ideas and conversations, because so often we don't have a picture of our future. I remember going to this conference with an organisation that I was part of, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars for a seat. And he was a business entrepreneur from America, and he stood up in front of this room of, I reckon, about 5,000 people and talked about the power of a vision board, of getting a bit of board, putting photos on it of things that you wanted. And I remember sitting there going, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is what you do when you're a kid. You cut out stuff and then you stick it up somewhere. But then I began to realise it was powerful. Even though it was limited, because it's very difficult to capture a picture that represents character qualities. It's very difficult to have a picture that represents a certain point in a relationship. It's very difficult to have a picture that represents causes like justice. It's very easy to find a picture of a possession, of an object. And so I think vision boards tend to be maybe a bit skewed there. But what I like about your memory was that your memory was not just a moment in the past. Because what was happening there?
We were making a promise about a future.
Yes. Well, here we go. Question moment. Do you remember your promise?
Well, I promised to love you with passion. On our wedding rings, we often ask people to work it out.
But you can't give that away because that's often a bet that I make with people.
Okay, well I
figure it
can't
out.
because my promises had all to do with those with those letters then. But made a promise for how we would. Well, we both did how I was going to love you, what that was going to look like in certain ways. But certainly 20 years later. Probably in some instances that love looks very different than how I pictured on that day at the beach. Not in a bad way, but it's different to when you're starting out and going, oh, the love's going to be like this. And it's like, love means some action and choosing, not just feeling all the feels. So but
I remember, because and the power for me of that memory is that those promises, because I remember a couple and I remember, I think, one promise about if there was a football game on and it got groaned from the crowd, if there was a football game on, I promised to get up and do the dishes or whatever. And the crowd there, our friends went, I think a little bit of disbelief. But that memory is tied to a future that we are building. And those promises, even though we can't, we might read back the document, but those promises still build that future now. And you're probably dying to know, but you'll have to join us around this table. But those 4 things are things that we can hold ourselves accountable to even now, as we are still building towards a future that is defined by those 4 kinds of love. And so, as you're watching this, perhaps you don't have a beautiful moment like that is both a memory and a pointer to the future. I hope you have some friends who you can talk about your hopes. You can talk about the future that you want to see come into being. Even for us who are parents, it's good to envision a future that is larger than just simply your kids. That we get to a stage in our lives when we can just make our world very small and are only concerned with our immediate circle. Sometimes that happens out of necessity. But to create a future, we need to, I think, enlarge our vision, enlarge what we see. And what we're going to do tonight is look at the power of a particular collective memory. We're going to look at the power of a particular promise of a future, and we're going to explore what it means to live between 2 trees, and we'll do that in a moment. So we're going to just start, we're going to look at 3 particular sections of scripture, as we so often do. And the first one I'm going to read briefly, and it's simply from Genesis chapter 2, and it just goes like this. Genesis chapter 2. And it says in verse 8, then God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and he placed the man he had made. The Lord God made all sorts of trees grow up from the ground, trees that were beautiful and that produced delicious fruit. And in the middle of the garden he placed a tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so it's just a short thing. It's a story told about the origins of us, of who we are. And we all tell ourselves different origin stories. I remember reading when I was a bit younger that the Vikings believed that the world emerged out of a storm of ice and rain, and that life began as a struggle for survival. And so for them, that coloured how they look at each other. I'm going to dominate you because that enables me to survive. And whatever origin story you believe in channels your focus in this world. It changes how you see people. And I love this idea of a garden. I'm not sure if you're a gardener. I mean, no, you're not much of a gardener. But being outdoors.
I do love nature.
You love it. Yeah. And you love beautiful things.
Yep.
And in this garden, we find in this story that garden is planted with trees. And how are the trees described?
Well, ones that are beautiful to look at and others that are good for eating, all kinds of fruit.
Yeah, and I like what you said about that earlier, about the difference between those two things.
Well, I think it's just amazing that it's not all just there for a purpose, just to nourish people and to just provide what you need. But, well, in one sense it is, because I kind of look at it and go, there's something within us that needs beauty in our lives. So it was there, like just something that was beautiful to look at. Why was that necessary?
Yeah.
But I love the two differences.
Yeah.
Purpose and something that seemingly has no purpose, but I think there is a purpose for beauty in the world.
Yeah. What I want to draw our attention to, though, is that in this story, there's this idea of a source of life, described here as a tree of life, but a source of life in addition to the trees that were good to eat, which
I think would be life-giving.
Yeah, totally. And in addition to trees that look lovely. And so we're not saying that this particular tree didn't have things good to eat. It may have. We're not saying it didn't look beautiful, but it's not described as those two things. Yeah. And what this suggests to us is that if we are looking for life, that it is more than simply survival and sustenance. That the origins of this story tell us that there is more to our lives than something in our belly. Interestingly, there is more to our lives too than enjoying beauty.
Yeah.
I don't think those two things are to be dismissed. But if we kind of go a little bit outside this story, in this story, humanity's access to this tree is cut off. But they still have access to trees that were good for food and beautiful to look at. But there's something else too in this story that says that in this garden that was so good, the beginnings, that there is a connection with the transcendent, that we're told that actually humanity walked with God in this garden. Now, I don't know how you feel about that. To me, that's a pretty positive start to the world, particularly when you compare it to be emerging out of this storm of ice and sleet. Or there's another actually famous myth from a similar place in the world called the Enuma Elish. And that tells the story of how the world emerged through the gods killing each other. And that planets emerged out of the blood flow. And if you believe in that as an origin story, if you tell that around campfires and origins, that's going to teach you that life is about taking and killing. And then this is a pretty tranquil perspective on the origins of life. And I think there is a power in our lives in reflecting, how do I think this all began? We love the origin stories in the movies, the backstory to the heroine or to the hero. There's power in celebrating the memories in the origins. We're going to now jump to a very different story, and if you're reading, I'm reading from a Bible in book form here. We're going actually right to the other end. And this is in a book called Revelation. And in the book of Revelation, chapter 22, it's describing a future. And the idea here is that there's the author has a vision. We might even call it a dream. Some people might even call it an hallucination, right? But in this vision, he's seeing things that are to come. And so in Revelation chapter 22, I'll read this out. And it says this. Then the angel showed me a river with the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. It flowed down the center of the main street On each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, with a fresh crop each month, and the leaves were used to heal the nations. And so here we have this future. And when you look at the future of the world, I wonder what thoughts that evokes. Like right now, if I talk to you about what do you think the future of the world is? What would you say?
I don't know. I don't really think about it like that. But
Yeah.
from what other people talk about and the things people focus on with, I guess, so much, warring and injustice everywhere, it's quite bleak.
Yes. I think that's not an unusual approach either. I don't really think too much about the future, only what gets thrust upon me by social media or what gets thrust upon me by wherever I get my news source.
Yeah.
And if I'm allowing my future vision to be governed by that, it is pretty bleak.
Yeah.
It's not. But there is great power in deciding the future that we want to be a part of. That we this week had a conversation with a friend about building a future. And our friend shared that their vision of the present was quite bleak and that they had lost hope for change in what was quite an unpleasant situation that they, set of circumstances that they found themselves in. And yet, as we talked about the idea that the future could look different for that person, that they could take decisions and actions that would build a new future, their body language shifted, the expression on their face shifted, and then they took a step towards creating that future, and we got to see the energy that they had simply by taking a step toward that future. Doesn't matter what you believe, like that's the reality. That if we can envision a future and then take a step of action towards that, that shifts us. And yet what we are told here is not just my vision, it's not just your vision, it is actually a vision for humanity. And there is this same mysterious source of life there, same mysterious tree that does more than just put food in your belly, is more than just good to look at. But actually we're told that here, this brings healing, not just to me, not just to you, but healing to the world. And when we look at the world, it's easy to see there are a lot of things that need to be healed. I've got plenty.
Yep.
You've got plenty. Oh, thanks for agreeing on that one.
No, I have. That's what I was saying.
But, and then we need to pause and say, well, what is the future that I can see? What is the future that I can imagine? Because our story is unfolding somewhere between these two stories. That there is a tree of life. That there will be a tree of life. That goes beyond what's in our bellies. That goes beyond even being beautiful to look at. And yet when we look around, some of us are scratching for things to put in our bellies. Some of us are finding it very difficult to see something beautiful in the world that we live in. That the memories that we have are in fact not of a beautiful place of tranquility and rest and even encounter with something beyond us, but actually our memories can be traumatic and painful. Our future, as opposed to being filled with a vision of this healing and hope. Somewhere else it talks about that every tear will be wiped away, there'll be an end to mourning and pain. And again, actually, it talks about an encounter with the transcendent, an encounter with the creator of life itself. And what do we do when we find ourselves in the middle? I got a phone call this week from someone who's just friendship has developed quite recently over the last couple of years in their life, and they just discovered today that this person that they are friends with has had cancer return, and they've been in remission for the last 3 years or so, and that the doctors are now saying it's time to get your affairs in order. And this man leaves behind a wife and a 13-year-old son. And we can talk about 2 trees. But then you think about this man who is confronted with the ultimate reality, the reality that for each of us, we will move from this life into something else, into something different. And that it doesn't matter what you believe, that will happen to each of us. It doesn't matter the life or the future you're building, that will happen. So then how do we live? How does this man live? And I want to answer that question by going to a third tree, actually. And this is actually found just somewhere else. It's in a letter written to a group of people who were exploring life, but they were exploring hard life. That they were pushed to the fringes of their community, that they were mocked, that there were many competing ideas around them, and they're trying to work out what's the way forward. And in this letter, I just want to read this one thing, a short sentence, and it says in the first letter of Peter in chapter 2, and it just simply says this, that he personally carried our sins in his body on the tree, so that we can be dead to sin and live for what is right. By his wounds we are healed. And that word there, tree, it's something made of wood. And so it comes actually from an old quotation where they used to hang people. And so it was physically hung on a tree, and then it became something made out of wood. And then it was used metaphorically to describe the death of someone on a crucifix, on a cross. And as we consider life between these 2 moments in this story of life, these 2 moments of experience with the divine, we see that actually the source of all life stepped into death. And there is a mystery that's somewhere in there. As Jesus becomes hung on this tree, that tree of death is actually transformed into a tree of life. And there is something in that mystery that as one person is wounded, somehow for all of humanity, there is healing. That as one person experiences death, somehow for all humanity, there is new life beyond a full belly, new life beyond enjoying beautiful things. See, because with these 2 trees, the part of the story is that around both trees we get to walk with God. And as we are living our lives in this moment between these 2 points, as we are walking through pain, as we are walking through difficulty, that the story of this third tree is that actually God walks with us in our pain. And as you are watching this tonight, I know that for many of you that you are living through pain right now. That the idea of a future has become difficult to picture, and that the idea of a memory to celebrate has become too much. And I want to invite you to take a risk, to take a step of faith, I want to invite you to trust that the one who was hung on a tree can lift you up. The one who experienced death can give you new life. I want to invite you to trust Jesus and to say, Jesus, I give you my life. I give you my situation. I want this life with you. This life with you that is beyond food in my belly, that is beyond simply beautiful things. God, I want this life with you that somehow builds a better world for all humanity. A life where I encounter the creator of the universe. And if that's a decision that you're ready to make as you're watching this, I'll invite you to pray this simple prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Let's pray. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if you pray that prayer tonight, you'll already begin to experience something of this mystery. Something of this healing that Jesus came into this world to give us. Something of this future, this life-filled future. We would love to support you with whatever the next step is that you need to take on your journey. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, please drop us a comment. We check in, we read them all. If you're watching this on social media channels, drop us a comment there, send us a direct message. And if you're passing through Southwest Sydney, we'd love to hear from you and invite you to gather around this table with us and friends. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.
Bye.